Hey everyone, this is me, Positive Phoenix here of the Cult of Causality podcast. The name we're currently going to be working on here, but honestly, the first episode is going to be titled Propaganda at These Nuts because I think that's funny. I'm here with Misogyny Wood, Racist Potato Salad, and my good friend Pringle, right? These are the only people here, but I figure that name's probably going to stick the most. Now, Pringle, would you like to give yourself a short introduction for what exactly it is we're doing here for this podcast?
Sure. So generally we have like a variety and just general, interesting topics that we have found and accumulated here within the cult. And we're just gonna kind of discuss them. We've been known to go on our schizo little rants, and so we're gonna have it here so that way other people can listen in.
So, to the reader who's here, right? I'm currently leader of the cult. Well, Pringle was my second in command, mostly kind of the adjutant. Like they're like the our accountant. Or like mostly like the manager of the people here. I'm just kind of like the face. I'm like
I'm
the
like a
guy.
really fancy unpaid intern.
That's very true, and I'm like the guy who molests people, and like 20 years is gonna be a documentary made about me. It's that it's a thing. Sexual molestation is not a laughing matter, which I'd like to state first, but it is funny when you talk about cults in passing. Like the like Waco cult and everything, which apparently there was no molestation, but we'll get to that later down the line here. So I'm gonna go through the topics really quickly here. I'm gonna try to pick three of them from the list here, and we can kind of work on those because I could go. I a lot of these things I have some like in-depth knowledge about, and I think it'd be fun to kind of bounce these ideas off of you, if that's good with you, Pringle.
Yeah, that's good.
So recently in so recently, right, I've seen kind of a big rise in interest regarding the Pope, right? And if you know, I know you, the reader, has doesn't really have any knowledge about this cult so far, but to Pringle, I've really talked in depth about the Pope and like the Catholic papacy and everything like that. And the thing is, I have no issue with Catholicism in the slightest, right? I think it's a good institution. It's very interesting. I don't personally agree with some of the things that fall with it, but everybody has their beliefs and they can believe whatever they want to believe, right? And freedom of religion and all that. And so we're gonna start with like mostly the Pope, and the second one, I'd like to talk about a little something that I think Pringle would be interested in hearing about, Wiggers. Now, Pringle, do you know what the
Oh, we're
word
just starting off strong, aren't
do
we?
you know what the word wigger? You know what Wiggers are?
You've mentioned it to me before.
So let me give you a quick rundown about Wiggers because I might have mentioned it a few. I think I mentioned it a few nights ago. So, are you familiar with Eminem?
Against, you're starting off strong.
So the term wigger, right? If I were to
Gotta
pull up like,
establish dominance here, I suppose.
well, I gotta establish dominance for all these like people who don't necessarily know what wiggers are, but they're very popular. They're it's a very popular thing now, among the kids nowadays. So I'm gonna try to read
The
off a
kids
little
nowadays.
tidbit about wiggers, right? Now, I'm sure the word wigger, right, sounds a bit familiar. Sounds very similar to another suggestive word that I can't really use on this podcast because I'm only 1% African,
Yeah, you
right?
lack the melanin for that one. I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
gonna lie to you.
I'm not dark enough for that, dude. I haven't listened to enough hip hop. But essentially, right, the wigger is a term for a white person of European ethnic origin, like those Anglos, you know, who emulates the perceived mannerisms, language, and fashions that are generally stereotypically reserved for African American culture. So black people, right? So like now, Pringle, I know you are an expert in black culture. Why don't you like name something you'd see stereotypically a wigger would
I
take
don't
part in?
think you would. I don't know if I would call myself an expert on black culture, if I'm being entirely honest with
I
you.
mean, I've heard that your brother is very, experienced a lot of black culture, very worldly gentleman. What
Oh,
can you give me some
he
perceived
is,
Wigger
as he would put it,
activities?
had it rough.
Of course. T-
He's he's one of those people that had it so rough growing up behind that gated community. If you catch my drift.
yeah. So
I
what
can't tell you too much about black culture because I'm not black, but I can tell you that the people that Phoenix are implying, I'm not gonna say it because I feel like I'm gonna get canceled. He doesn't care, I do. But the people we're talking about, they kind of like pose and they try to act almost like gangster. Like they're doing their damnedest to just seem cool to everyone around them, but in doing so, they're seeming extremely uncool. Like they're making themselves out to be like major fucking losers. I can't phrase it any better than that.
right?
It's
So
attempting to be something you're not.
So, given that Pringle has a distinct fear of being seen as being canceled due to their, perspectives on things, right?
Ethnicity.
I'm completely not phased by it because I am 1/8 African American, which means I'm an expert on Black culture by default. So one of the things I'm going to be talking about, right, is something called wiggers and blonkies. Do you know what a blonkie is per se? Because I'm not going to pull it. I don't think Urban Dictionary has something for this, but if you
I believe you've mentioned it to me before, but I don't exactly remember the definition. Why
well,
don't you say it for the audience here?
well, a blonkie is kind of like the black version of a wigger, right? It's like a white guy, like a black guy tries to act like a white guy. Now you might be wondering, like, is that racist? It absolutely is. Now you might be asking, like, how do you define it? Because I'm sure the person who here has heard the word honky before, which is kind of like a redneck, kind of like a very white guy. Like imagine a guy named Jim, living in like Appalachia. It's a white guy. Simple thing. Now then you think about that to apply it to like a black guy, like a honky, right? Like a black honky, right? So I'm gonna say this, and this is gonna seem a little bit like interesting, right? Because it's incredibly racist, but I don't give a fuck at this point. A black honky is kind of like imagine a black guy in Target wearing like a blue polo shirt with like khakis and a black belt.
Oh, so like a evil State Farm.
Evil State Farm agent. Yeah, just imagine like Jake from State Farm, but like if he wasn't named like Jamal in real life. It's like a black guy named
Mhm.
Tyler. So mostly like we're gonna get into like the economy of things because I was watching this podcast recently, right? Matt and Shane's secret podcast. I don't subscribe to Patreon because I'm a broke college boy, but they were talking about Blonkies with Theo Vaughn, another famous like podcaster, very important comedian. And one of the things that was interesting was that they talked about kind of like the switching culture, right? How you have like Blonkies and like Wiggers, right? Kind of swapping places, right? Because there's like I'm sure most people have like, kind of understood that there's like this movement, right, called the Black Excellence movement, right? Very common. Right? I know a little bit about it, mostly because I'm student of sociology. But one of the things mainly is that they try to kind of like end the idea of like hood idealism, right? You want to like leave the neighborhood, you want to like get a college education, you want to get a good job, right? Be like a good member of society, right? You don't want to necessarily live in like the very like gangster lifestyle, right? It's become very common, in recent years, right? And so most of these people push like there's scholarships for members like African American communities and other marginalized groups, right? And there's a lot of excellence groups, but mostly they focused on specifically African American communities, mostly like Chicago, Detroit, and other places like that, right? And then you have like Wiggers who are like white guys who grew up in like Gilchrist Estates in fucking New Mexico, and they're just like guys whose like father works for like some like insurance agency, and they're just like having like sweatpants and shit. They're like walking around being like, "We'll fuck you up, dude. You know what you're talking about?" And like they act like wannabe gangsters. Like pretty. Let me ask you.
I'm gonna give you a. I'm sorry, it's just something that I've noticed with my personal experience with them. They also tend to have short man syndrome. Do you know what that is, Phoenix?
I know short man syndrome. Why don't you introduce to the audience?
Oh yeah, no. So it's whenever like a guy is below. Let's give a number here, like 5'10",
Yeah.
and then he thinks the entire world, no exclusive group, the entire world is against him because he is under 6 foot, and thus he retaliates because he believes so heavily in this absurdity.
Right.
Hmm.
So it's like people at the
And they
bottom of the food
typically
chain.
are like white or because Hispanic. Like I've noticed. I'm Hispanic myself, right? I know a
Right.
lot of Hispanics are stereotypically like shorter, but they're okay with that. It's mainly white guys.
It's like little brownies. It's a brownie bites. That's what we used to call it. Like I don't know if you ever been to Costco or anything. Do you know what a brownie bite is?
Those like mini brownies.
Yeah, that's what we call Mexicans down here. Brownie bites. Like small and sweet.
All right.
Small and sweet. No, anyway, sorry,
Small
off
and sweet
topic.
is something to call another man, Phoenix. I'll tell you that much.
No, I used to call those like Latina women. Like I'm on that Christopher Columbus mindset. Gotta show up on foreign shores, conquer their women. No, but no, but specifically like when it comes to low man syndrome, I've observed it a lot in mostly like guys and like it's mostly been something that like perceived like alpha male groups. Like me, I have no idea. I like look, I'm all about trying to become like more masculine, like in general, right? But I know there's a very clear distinction between like masculine, like the necessary thing, like like a good person, good man, that kind of thing, and then like toxic masculinity, right? And I know a lot of people hear the words toxic masculinity, they think like, oh, it's like liberal bullshit, right? But no, I think toxic masculinity is just kind of like what you perceive to be a masculine trait when really like the most you can really like the best that you can really be in terms of like masculinity is either like a father or a husband, right? And so if it's not directly kind of bettering yourself for the sake of your family, I think it'd probably be like toxic masculinity. It's like I mean, because I maybe this is like my perspective on culture because my family's always been very like family oriented. Like you don't really make a decision unless you're kind of clear with everyone else, right? But I think mainly like masculinity is derived from what you could do for like your family and like your children, your grandchildren, that kind of thing, right? Like you want to be obviously strong, you want to be skilled so you can pass on to your kids. But I've noticed a lot of these like perceived alpha male, like hyper masculine figures, right, are kind of pushing this like shit. Like if you're a small guy, you had to like fight twice as hard for women's attention and such. And I think this is the wrong way to look at it. I think that I think that honestly the best thing is just short kings, right? Because on like there's a I'm sure you've seen it like nowadays on the internet, Pringle, that you have a lot of these guys who like look, I'm all for bullying women for things they can't change, like being short. But I think when it comes to guys, a lot of them take it more personally. Like women, if you're short and you're a woman, nobody gives a fuck. You know, it's just like whatever. But if you're a guy and you're short, a lot of like there's a lot of perceived like I guess degradation that comes along with that because you're like considered less of an intimidating figure and so you're less of a man. I don't agree with that, but I think it's like an unfortunate thing. I think that might be the root of little man syndrome, but I think a lot of guys take it too far. So
I think my, like, personal gripe with it is that, people tend to use it as, like, an excuse rather than, like, an attempt to work harder,
sure.
right?
Hmm.
They'll have this as they would see it, it's not, like, a downside, but they'll see this perceived downside and just automatically, like, give up, almost, in, like, trying hard and just blame everything on their height.
Yeah, and so they'll mostly just attribute their failures to more like physical traits. And like I'm not gonna lie to you, right? I'm sure there are like people out there who, if you're like a small guy, it'll be like, oh, you fucking you, whatever, and they'll treat you like shit, right? But I know that's probably like a very very small but vocal minority of like the populace. So
Mhm.
moving on from like the topic of well like no it's just all right, moving on to another short king. Let's talk about Adolf Hitler.
Oh,
So
that man.
yeah no so one of the topics we actually
Getting
have
into
here.
politics as fast as Thanksgiving dinner, I see. Alright.
Exactly, dude, I'm like a drunk uncle. I'm about to like be like, you guys want to play some lawn darts and like actually punch my wife, and then it was it's be a really awkward conversation. You has to leave, but I'm not going to. That would fucking Anyway, it's like well, no, but when we're talking about like Adolf Hitler, I'm not calling him a short king, but the guy was like 5'6", I think like 5'8" actually, like maybe. He was the ruler of the country, but no. One of the things this was really talking about was about the Spear of Destiny, right? Now, I don't know if you know. Do you know what the Spear of Destiny is, bro?
I do not.
So the Spear of Destiny is an object in mostly like Christian mythology, right? Where supposedly when Jesus Christ was crucified, after 3 days, well, not 3 days, but after several days of essentially being on the cross, right, a Roman soldier was told to end his life, and so Longinus, the name of the soldier, right, took his spear and stabbed it into the side of Jesus Christ, and supposedly when he did so, he like received this grand vision of the future and like God and everything, and so he converted to Christianity. But the spear was said to have had very notable properties afterwards because it was like soaked in the blood of divinity, right? And so, like, the Spear of Destiny has made some like several appearances in popular culture, right? Most notably, I think most notably recently was the Constantine movie with Keanu Reeves. Have you ever seen that?
I beg your pardon? Repeat?
Have you ever seen the Constantine movie about the Spear of Destiny? It
I have not.
has Keanu Reeves. Well, eventually we're gonna watch it, and I'll probably like make another. We'll probably make another episode post that. Probably discuss this later. But supposedly, like the Spear of Destiny, Lance Longin, it's called the Lance of Longinus or Longinus, right? I'm gonna call it Longinus because Neon Genesis Evangelion anime of the year. I love jerking off on people in comas. I know you do as well, Pringle. So we were talking about the Lance Longinus and things like that. Essentially, the Lance Longinus, past its origin in Catholic tradition, has become something of a notable like holy relic because it's obviously passed hands through most people. It's supposedly being like Constantinople before it was sacked, and if you really like want to look at it right, most people kind of deem it as like a bunch of nonsense. right? Because it is, supposed to be a holy rock. It's a spear that killed God, right? It's a very odd thing to talk about, especially in like notable circles, because though the historians agree that Jesus Christ was a real person, the topic of divinity is widely disputed. It's controversial. So the Lance Longinus supposedly fell into the hands of Adolf Hitler, who was a notable occultist who believed that having a spear which pierced divinity would help Germany achieve Lebensraum, or the world, like the living space, would be like the world empire, right? So just from like kind of getting on to like where I'm at here, like what do you think the Lance Longinus does?
Not, I couldn't tell you.
Well, the Lance Longinus is supposedly supposed to have like good luck for who any person that wields it, right? And a notable thing in history was that Adolf Hitler supposedly came into possession of the Lance Longinus, right? And it was actually like the Nazi like army supposedly had the Lance Longinus in a museum in Germany. And so what happened was is that during World War II, the Lance Longinus was lost because the Allies captured this specific museum, right? And apparently, supposedly got the Lance Longinus, and then weeks later, the German army began collapsing. And so this itself is interesting, right? It's a very interesting coincidence, right? But a lot of people are kind of pointing this to kind of be like the lance has magical powers, because notably throughout history, like conquerors and very important figures of renown, right, have wielded this lance at one point or another, and immediately after losing control of it, they've died, or they've like supposedly had like met horrible fates, like everything's collapsed. So let's say for a minute, right, that like in a hypothetical that the lance of Longinus was a real object which had real power. What do you think that that would do if a country had in the 21st century had possession of the lance of Longinus?
I think that very depending on the country.
It's like let's say that like Bosnia got the hands. Let's say Bosnia, some piece of shit little nation, and I'm not gonna take this back. Some like piece of shit little like nation in the Balkans got like the Lance of Longinus, right? Like some country that has like a population of like 200,000 people got this like lance, which we'd cause like world
They're gonna
domination.
start conquering everything around them.
It'd be so
No?
funny. It'd be so
They go
funny.
mad with power.
It'd
It'd
be
be
so
funny
funny.
as hell.
Yeah,
It'd
it'd be
be
funny
like
as hell.
whenever your little sibling starts acting out.
Mm,
It's like you don't have any power. You think you do. It's just not. No.
yeah.
Good fucking luck.
Well, you gotta wonder because it's like, sorry, uh, when it comes to Lance of Longinus, supposedly, despite the odds, you will consistently win no matter what, like battles. Now,
Hmm.
that in itself is very interesting, like logistics wise, because I'm not gonna lie to you, there's very few ways that like in a million man military force would lose to a country that's a population of like 200,000 in like a war. There's very, very slim odds of the country winning, but let's say you did have like a win all. How do you think that would go? Like, what do you think would happen?
I think people would start believing in it more. It's giving it more power. You know.
I think it'd be interesting because I think that it would deal with all the implications, Like if supposedly I had if like I told the country like, look, I have a spear that killed Jesus Christ, and then I'm like the leader of like a little country, and I began taking over every single country around me, even like superpowers. I began wiping them out. It would give some credence because I'd give credence to the idea of like Jesus Christ and everything, right? I think it might cause like a religious revolution. And
I didn't even think about the implications of like both proving and disproving religions.
yeah, because like, well, think about it. So I think one of the most, yeah, one of the so Christianity I think is or the Christianity and Catholicism is one of the largest religions on earth, right? I think it's like 1.7 billion people. Of 7 billion, 7.8 billion are Catholic or Christianity and Protestant Christianity in some form. Then there is, well, of course, then there's I think like Buddhism, or no, I think it's Hinduism, which is in second place, or it might be Islam, and then it's I think Buddhism and like a few other religions passed by. Because I know Hinduism has like a population like I think it has 2 billion worshippers. I don't know. It's some absorbent amount, right, with Hinduism, because it is one of the world's like oldest religions. But one of the things I think would be interesting is that if you did have confirmation that, so yeah, no, Christianity is the largest religion globally, Islam second, and then Buddhism is third, right? I think like Judaism, which is like an offshoot, well, not an offshoot of Christianity, but part of Christianity, has a I think something like 10-20%, like 10-15% of the world population, which isn't a lot, but whatever.
And, the world population is a lot, so 10% of that is still absurd.
I, like history, will agree that Jews don't matter. So we're just gonna brush over that for right now. We're gonna mostly go on to the next podcast topic because speaking of Christianity and Catholicism, let's talk about the Pope. Now,
Back
Pringle,
to the Pope, I
do
see.
you want to we're back to the Pope because as I like, okay, I'd
It
like to
all
give
comes back to the Pope.
it all comes back to the Pope. That fucking Argentinian windbag. No, look, so so to give some context, right, to our listeners here, the Pope was he was fun. This old man was messing around a little bit, right? And so he's like, I gotta admit, right, having like an entire population of geezers be like the rulers of an institution is a little bit. It doesn't exactly seem like a great idea. And so I was watching this anime, Hellsing Abridged, right, which is made by Team 4 Star, very talented. It's fucking hilarious. I highly suggest that anybody here who, uh, you know, watches YouTube go and like watch like the 10 parts. It's very entertaining. I love them. I try to watch them at least every year. But in like the story, right, there's and the spoilers alert because we're gonna go into like the later half. So in the story, right, Dracula is like a character, right, and so England is ruled by the Hellster organization, which has Dracula contracted to kind of wipe out vampires and other supernatural creatures, right. And so England and other Protestant nations are kind of like protected by Helsing, and so mainland Europe, which is mostly Catholic, right, is kind of protected by the Catholic Church, right, which have their own kind of like anti-vampires, anti-supernatural creature force, right. And so what happens in the story is that the Nazis return, and they have vampires working with them, and so the Nazi vampires attack England and fuck it up completely. And so in the story, the Catholic Church is like, this is our fucking chance to like dice shit up, destroy England, those Protestant, separatists, right? And just kind of take things over. And so in Enrico Maxwell, the guy who's leading this Catholic coup, because he's leading what is essentially like a splinter force, because the Catholic Church is like, we don't get involved, but he takes his little followers and he's gonna go to attack England because of this. And so anyway, he's making his speech right when he has like the all his like soldiers assembled talking shit about the Pope, like that fucking old Catholic windbag accepting gay people and the poor, that fucking piece of shit, like that guy. And he goes on this whole fucking schizo rant about it, and everybody's like chilling about it, and it's a bunch of nonsense. But I was talking with another cult member of ours, Siri, the little bird, who we love, by the way. Like, don't you?
Oh, Siri's a little goober.
They're a little bit, yeah, they're a little bit. I love them, but they're just a little bit slow. And so, one of the things that happens is that I'm talking all this shit to Siri about like the Pope, and we're going like that, and I'm like, that Catholic windbag's gonna get what he deserves. And so on this rant, I go on the internet and I try to find this portion about try to find some news about the Pope. And so the Pope supposedly took an Aztec deity called Pachamama, right, and brought a statue of this Aztec deity into the Catholic Church, like the actual like St. Peter's Basilica, which is a big no-no, right? Because I don't know if you know really much about Catholicism. Pringle, do you happen to like you ever read the Bible? Go to Catholic school?
No, I was never religious. That just sounds like a big no-no, just automatically.
Because like so in the Bible we have this thing about like the origins of monotheism is essentially like well, the origins of monotheism is in Zoroastrianism, which is something else, but essentially in Christianity we worship one God, of course, right? We worship like Jesus Christ as well, but it's kind of like it's complicated. And so we worship one God, right? We do things that way, right? Having other deities of other religions as part of your belief is considered a big no-no. It's like Christianity, like the God of Abraham, all the way. And so what happens is that there's a specific portion of the Bible that says you cannot have false idols, which are essentially the other gods of religions, and have like statues of them. Like you can't pray to them, you can't worship them, right? If you believe in God, you can only believe in Him, right? It's like an exclusivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Catholic Church, being very quote unquote progressive the way they are, they're kind of like bending the knee to other religions now because they want to create like a more unified world. And that's good on paper, but it's kind of like going against your fundamentals. You know what I mean? And so they brought in a Aztec deity, like a traditional Aztec deity, into St. Peter's Basilica named Pachamama, and had this whole speech about how all gods are equal. And I'm like,
Oof.
whoa.
That's one way to piss off your god. I'll tell
That's
you
one way
that
to
much.
piss off your
That's
god.
like that's it's like going to your girl with a new chick and being like, yeah, but like I love women.
But
Like
all life
it's
matters.
no.
What is love wins? No, but it essentially brings like this Aztec god. And I do I need to like I'm sure you have some understanding of why that's horrible, like the Aztecs, right?
Yeah.
You know, blood sacrifice. We're gonna fuck up and we're gonna take slaves and shit, right? You know, like the
Of all
hate
things
crimes.
Aztec,
Yeah.
that's like being like, yeah, no, I empower everyone's beliefs, even the Nazi. Like, no,
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 and
there are
so
certain things that you should not touch, dude.
and I think the message was that like okay, so you can make the argument that colonists like conquistadors like fucked up Aztecs, destroyed their religion, but at the same time the Aztecs were like sacrificing babies to like snake gods and shit on top of pyramids. So at the same time you got to think to yourself like, well, you know, it happens. Like yeah, you gotta get to the point where you're just gonna be like, yeah, some things are a no no, right? And so the cat like literally the whole thing with the Aztecs is that every single group around the Aztecs in South America were like fuck the Aztecs because they're kidnapping our people, they're taking slaves. We're gonna work with these white devils, these pale faces. No, but we're gonna work with the pale faces and we're gonna fuck up the Aztecs because the Aztecs are causing problems. And so the Aztecs were somewhat like summarily eliminated. And so it's really interesting because I think what he was trying to do is he's trying to be like the Aztecs were like a marginalized or colonized like society that the like Westerners destroyed, and so they have to kind of like give them a place in the spotlight because of that. I don't know what that's about because like I can understand if you wanted to kind of like if you were Catholic, a Christian, or whatever, and you were just like don't bully like followers of Hinduism because that's their belief.
Like, don't be mean to them.
I could fully understand that because it's like that's your other belief. They don't really murder motherfuckers, which they do, but we'll get to that later. But it's kind
It's
of
like the
like
people simping over serial killers where they're like, but they're too pretty to be like evil. It's like, no, no, no.
yeah,
They could be both.
and it's like well, there's also this idea of like ethnocentrism. Do you know what ethnocentrism is?
No.
So
Explain.
ethnocentrism is a very like big thing in anthropology, right? And so in anthropology, it's the study of human cultures, belief systems, right? Just generally like the study of human past, right? And so what happens is that in this kind of culture belief, right, you have to kind of separate yourself from your culture and look to another culture from a third party neutral position. Because like nothing can be weird when you study it. Like let's say that you go to like a like in Texas at the time, right? On the Gulf Coastal Plains, there was a group of people called the Coahuiltecans, right? And so the Coahuiltecans, right, were a Native American tribe who would they were hunter gatherers, right? But they mostly never really caught game, and they subsided on things like rabbits and roots and other just naturally occurring vegetation, right? They weren't really warlike people; they were just chilling. And so the thing was that the Gulf Coastal Plains never really had a lot of resources, and so the Cohiltecans would have something called I think second supper. And I don't know if you know what that word means, like second supper. I don't know if you know what that means.
Even if I did, I'd have you explain it.
That's a good point. So, Second Supper is essentially the Coholtecans in times where there wasn't exactly food, they would eat the food, shit it out, and they would try to eat it again to get the nutrients out of it. And now, to me and you, that's fucking disgusting, right? Which it is. It's unsanitary. It's very unhealthy for you. It's legitimately just very like, ugh, when you think about it. But to the Coholtecans, it was considered like a normal thing because it was desperate times called for desperate measures, right? It's like this guy like I'd rather survive than die. You know what I mean? And so a lot of the colonists were kind of like, well, like I get it, desperate times call for desperate measures, kind of fucked up, whatever. And but obviously, like there's much worse things you could be eating than shit if you're like a native tribe and you're like killing motherfuckers. You know what I mean? And so like
You're like,
ethnocentrism,
times are hard, but they could be worse.
yeah, it could be worse. Like you could be eating motherfuckers. Like we could be like get all the babies, slice them open, throw them in a pot, eat them. Like it could be much worse. And I know it's like I know that like there's some
It
religion.
sounds terrible. It sounds like we're like belittling this situation.
I am belittling the
We're
situation.
not.
Fuck these people.
I.
Fuck these people. And
It
like
sounds terrible, but it was terrible. That's the
yeah,
thing.
and it's like when you're starving, I can understand how someone would look at that and be like, well, I don't want to die, and you drew that point. And so, well, like one of the things that's interesting, and I don't want to belittle Caholtec and like culture because, but the thing is that the thing with Caholtec is that they when Spanish colonists arrived, they integrated into the Spanish colonists, and like the tribes disappeared around 100 years ago, 150 years ago, because most of them converted to Catholicism and just generally like began integrating with white tribal society, and they were seen. It was really interesting because they were seen as equals at that time, and so it was like it was
Rare.
almost like I'm sure that their colonists would probably treat them with a little bit of like anger because it's like you fucking savages, but it's like there was like a unification there. You know, there wasn't like how you see with the Comanches, the Apaches, where people look at them and be like, "You're all fucking savages. I hate you guys," like that, right? The Coltecans are just kind of like, "All right, you want to worship God? Bang it, let's go." And so that's just kind of like what happened. And
Baller. Get in this bitch.
get
Like,
in, let's go. We'll get you guys some shoes. And so uh,
hit you up.
ethnocentrism.
We'll take you
And
to McDonald's.
let me show you guys know what this is. It's called a burrito. Fuck them up, right? And so uh, and so the thing with Kohotec, and so with ethnocentrism, right? Essentially, the belief is you need to remove yourself and your cultural perceptions when pursuing another culture because you don't want to perceive their culture through a third-party lens. You want to kind of immerse yourself in that culture and understand why they're doing it without any of like your kind of without prejudice, essentially, right? And
Mhm.
so when it comes to like the Aztecs and other things, right? I understand that we might perceive like sacrificing people with like an like a Western European ethnocentric point of view, but at the same time they were murdering motherfuckers. And now that's not to say that like people probably weren't killed and raped during the attack of like the colonists, but at the same time like it's war, you know. It's like history is full of bloodshed, but at the same time like if you're just killing motherfuckers to kill them, I can't really agree with that. Like I can't really align with that sort of mentality. And so having like an Aztec statue of like the deity that children were sacrificed to, and then putting that in the Catholic Church with like before like the statue of Jesus Christ who said, "Any of you who would bring harm to a child should have a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the sea." It doesn't work very well. It just doesn't clear, you know.
No, not at all. That's like going to an orphan's house and hanging up a photo of their like parents' killer. It's not right.
Yeah.
Like,
And so the thing was is that I said like that, and so I was talking to Siri. You know, it's very late at night. I'm kind of out of it, and I tell him like that Argentinian windbag's gonna get what he deserves. He's gonna have a millstone tied around his neck and thrown in the sea for that shit. And coincidentally, about a week later, right, this is filmed on 2/27/2025 or February 27th, 2025. So if any of you are listening in the future who are looking back at this podcast, you'll see that we are operating purely with knowledge from the specific date, given that it's 5:10 p.m. Central Time. Uh, the Pope kind of came down with some issues with his lungs a little while ago, right? And so I made this joke to Siri that there's this atheist that was very popular. He would go around the world being like, God isn't real. Religion is primitive. We need to move past it, right? And then he got vocal cord cancer and he died, right? Crazy shit, right? Just absolutely fucking insane. Because he was very, very famous. Like, we might not know him, but he was like, his books would be in like airports, right? You'd have like, you'd be walking around, you see his books and magazines plastered everywhere. And so I think he's even had a few TED Talks, but like he was everywhere, and then just to see something kind of like if this was done like 100 years ago, it'd be like divine retribution. That's what he gets, you know. And
100 years ago, they would have been like, this is like proof that God is real.
yeah, and this is
But a
some
lot of
great
things get chalked up to coincidence nowadays,
yeah, there are a lot of things,
which I think is curious.
and well, it's like I was watching this movie yesterday. Like no, I gotta talk about this because we're reaching 4 degrees of separation from like the original talk about the Aztecs and the Pope. Anyway, but essentially, right, this guy gets quick cancer, and then coincidentally, I'm like that Argentinian windbag's gonna get what he deserves, right? Get a millstone tied around his neck and thrown in the sea, and so it's like the iconography of this guy having a rope tied around his neck, like choking and then drowning, is insane because coincidentally, the Pope and I was tracking timeline as goes along, so I want to talk about this in the podcast. But the Pope went into the hospital for bronchitis, which means it was a throat infection, right? Or a medical infection. But he
Mhm,
goes in
mhm.
first from a throat infection, like in like this, just, his tonsils and everything, and then he gets it. It goes to bronchitis, right? And then it goes to something in pneumonia, which I don't know if you know this, right? But do you know exactly what pneumonia is? Like, because I'd like to give us a rundown if you do, because it's like I feel like I've been talking too much during this podcast.
Oh no, you're fine.
I've been yapping, but
As you do.
so yeah, no. So I'm the figurehead. Is my job, and so pneumonia is essentially when water begins developing inside the lungs, and this leads to bacterial infection because bacteria will propagate in the lungs and cause like just further infections. And so he got double pneumonia in his lungs. So his lungs are filling with fluid, water essentially, and then his kidney started shutting down, which is something else that processes water, right? Because it helps process like a urine, right? I don't
All
necessarily
going to shit
I
very
don't
fast.
necessarily want to like be like I killed the Pope, but to be like to
If it
quote,
happened, it happened.
yeah,
Don't take credit, but take credit.
yeah, I'd be telling my grandchildren about that. I'm gonna get like a bust to Pope Francis, be like, I know this guy. See that? I got him. No,
You're gonna
but
be 90 talking about how you killed the Pope, and they're gonna be like, "Sure, Grandpa.
I'm gonna be like, dude, can you imagine the guy who
Just
like
eat the
uncovered?
pills."
Can you imagine the guy who like uncovered Hitler's corpse and like tried to take a picture of it, like telling his grandkids like, yeah, I fucking cut Hitler's throat when he was already dead. Yeah, sure, Grandpa. It's like no, but it's like well, we're talking. It's whatever. And so, 100 years ago, if I was in the St. Peter's Basilica, right, and let's say the Pope had done something like this, and I walked up to him, right, like Simon Magistel, like calling him out, being like, "You're a fucking idol worshiper, you're a heretic, a blasphemer," and then said, "In the words of Jesus Christ, he who brings the youngest of my flock to sin, should have a millstone tied around his neck and thrown into the sea," right? Having the me doing that, and then immediately later the magazines or like the tabloids start reporting that the Pope's lungs began filling with water. It's fucking crazy. Like I would be national, like there would be national fucking attention because that's such a like even if you look at it through like the realm of like an atheistic
Well,
perspective,
he's such like a big figurehead,
yeah, and it's like
right?
and so the thing is, it's like that's crazy shit because that's like me walking to a town square and saying like I damn all of you to hell. You all will see the fucking burn of my wrath, and then you all will die in a flood, and then it rains like the worst it has in centuries, and floods and destroys the town. That's national attention. That's gonna be like, holy fuck, what happened here? You know. And so when it
Mhm.
comes to the Pope and everything, right? Just having a figure like this get quoted biblical scripture and then he begins suffering a plague from that scripture is fucking insane. It is insane. Like, it's like I don't know. Have you ever heard like the Book of Exodus? Like, we watched the Prince of Egypt together once. You got date raped during that time, didn't you?
Partially.
It's only partial date rape. Don't go tell anyone yet. And so anyway, no, for context, it wasn't date rape. It was love. So anyway,
Yeah, sure.
no, come on. It wasn't that bad. Like it was a little uncomfortable, but it was not that bad.
No, it was friends. It was
Yeah, we're just fucking around. We were just fucking around.
you know how friends like how friends are gay as shit with each other. Yeah,
And like yeah,
it's that.
they like kiss you on the ear, and be like it's okay, Pookie.
Kiss the back of your neck, touch your tits, and they're like, "Yeah, no, it's okay, you're safe now."
It's
It's like,
okay.
no.
It was girl on girl for our listeners. It wasn't that bad. And so uh, it wasn't that okay. We need to actually bring that up in
There was
podcast.
no men involved.
There was no men involved. There was only me. Fuck. It's just like and so
Surprisingly, it wasn't you.
dude, I'm the co-leader. I need to start like I need to start upping my numbers, dude. Fuzzy's beating my
Start upping your
ass,
touching numbers.
dude. It's like the NFL draft. I gotta start getting my numbers up, dude. We're doing Eagles. I gotta make it a Super Bowl. The rapist Super Bowl.
The Rapist Super Bowl. That's a new
Yeah.
one.
Well, it's like who's up the rapist Super Bowl? It's like Bill Cosby. Jeffrey Epstein. Like like P Diddy, the founding fondlers.
The, the founding fathers of fondling.
The founding fondlers. Yeah.
Mhm.
Write the Declaration of Molestation.
You're damn right. I bet you study that scripture every time you go to bed.
Dude, you know it, all right? You gotta like, dude, I've got that down to a science. You gotta like put your hand on a girl's ear, like give him a little shoulder rub, be like, shh, let me take care of you. And so,
You gotta make it seem like it's something their father would tell them,
yeah,
depending on how traumatized they are.
you gotta like walk up to them like you
I
have
love
like
how we went from killing the Pope to to how to assault somebody.
yeah no so let me guys run you down my my let me guys run you down. So yeah, let's say you're at a bar, right? See a fine lady, right, sitting at the bar stool, right, just away from you. You gotta like walk up to her. She's talking to the friends, right? You gotta wait till the friends leave, right? Get your prey alone from the herd. And so you gotta walk up to them, right? Put your hands on the back of their shoulders, like really dig you like your thumbs in there, get them all relaxed, be like shh, like kiss them on the ear. Daddy's home. You're gonna be okay. It's imperative that this is a stranger because that's the only way to work. You gotta trust in me. Anybody who listens to takes this advice, I'm not responsible for whatever happens, but you should totally do this
Yeah,
because it
we will
works.
not be paying your bail if you go to jail.
We will not be held responsible, but that being said, this is how most of the people in the cult got recruited.
Yeah,
Most women in this cult do
look,
call me
we're not going to
fathers.
be held responsible.
So
We're
when
not going to
I
be held responsible. But like, if our tactics work, let us know. DM
exactly,
us.
if you get married due to this advice, invite me to your wedding, dude. I will be your best man, and I will say that I will do like the priest thing with like the little Bible. I'll read out your like vows and shit. I'll do it. Just give me a plane ticket. Let's go. Like you wanna get married under the
Actually,
founding
I think you
father?
could get I think you could get a verification to be able to do that for
Yeah,
like $35 online.
I heavily considered doing that, but apparently you need to do those like a whole bunch of legal loopholes, and it's like I've considered it. I really have. And so, but whatever, we'll go around that another time because I think I technically have a certificate to do that. But so yeah, no, that's how you get your prey, you know, see supple, weak. But anyway, back to what were we talking about before this? Like, I mean, we were talking about killing the Pope, but what led us into the founding fathers?
I could not tell you. We're gonna have to like play back the clip. How are we doing on time, by the way?
We actually only have 20 minutes left.
Oh, surprising.
Yeah, because I was gonna say this kind of flowed pretty naturally. So
The
anyway,
flow's going well. We're bouncing from topic to topic.
exactly, we're bouncing from topic to topic.
I'm surprised we've only talked about touching people like for a little bit now.
So what's it called?
It's a very concerning thing that just left my mouth. All
Well, it's
right.
well, you know what? Like if it flows, it flows. You know what I mean?
If it if it goes with what we're saying, I suppose.
If it flows red, take him to bed. That's what my grandfather used to always know. So it's
Should we move on to the next topic?
well, let me spin the wheel on topics here. Just scroll down. Well, we're just gonna land on the first thing I think is interesting. Blood meridian. You know, so do you know what blood meridian is?
You said you'd explain this to me later on.
Okay, so blood meridian is interesting. So Pringle has no real knowledge of what blood meridian is. It's something of a favorite from my book. But if you go on the internet now, you look at blood meridian, you'll see a lot of like hype edits and stuff because it's mostly because a popular YouTuber who mostly makes a video essays, Wendigoon, right? I'm sure you've heard of him. Maybe it's Pierce the Iceberg.
I have heard of Wendigoon actually.
And so Wendigoon made a video about like the book, like the darkest book he's ever read, right? And it was Blood Meridian. And so Blood Meridian's a pretty simple book, right? It's mainly about a character named the Kid, right? That's all his title is. Generally his adventures around like the old Wild West, and that sounds very nice. But at the same time, you run into like a gaggle of characters, and it's essentially this big, very almost surreal story about man and the nature of good and evil, right? There's a character called the Judge who's become very popular in media now. It's just generally like an evil, but almost terrifying figure, because there's many illusions in the story that he could be like the devil, you know. But generally,
Mhm.
like people see him as just like this malicious figure, but very notable like hype edits. He's kind of like figures, and I don't know, like it's difficult to explain it because
No,
he
I
has
think I
some
understand.
he
He's
has
a an evil presence that gets praised by the people.
yeah, well, not necessarily praised by like the people. Like in the story, well, in the story, he's generally like a very malicious figure. And the thing is that when you read the story for the first time, you listen to things go on, you don't really see the evil of the judge the first time around. But it's one of those things that if you reread it, where you get to the end and you look through it, you'll find things that are just generally malicious. It's kind of like knowing the twist at the end of a movie and then seeing the hints after, like the hints leading up to it as you rewatch the movie, like the signs.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so like
I mean, there's the example of my favorite anime,
mhm,
Tomodachi Game.
Tamachi game.
In the yeah, you know me and Tomodachi Game.
Mhm.
But in the second game that they end up playing, they like at the end, they're like, if you were paying attention the whole time, you could have seen the hints. And
Right.
if you rewatch it, sure as shit, they're there. They're just really subtle.
So the how to say this? The interesting thing about the judge is that mainly he isn't a good character. Like not a good character. Like he's bad. He's poorly written. He's amazingly written. But even in the story, everybody in the story is kind of a bad person, right? Like everyone in the book is
Mhm.
a bad person, right? Objectively, I think there's some that are like more good than others, but everyone's just objectively kind of a piece of shit because the main group called the Glanton Gang, right, is essentially this group of people, and they are gathering up, and their main job is that they hunt Native American, like Native Americans or Mesoamericans, because they go into Texas and into Mexico, right? And they mainly just kind of focus on scalping Native Americans or like Indian. I'm gonna call them Indians, right? These they scalp the Indians and they deliver them like to different places because back in the day, certain towns and cities would pay you money per scalp just because you were taking care of the Indian problem. Because Indians would be having raids and they'd be attacking caravans, just disrupting trade. So if you scalped a native and then gave the scalp to someone like the Mexican army or the American army, they'd pay you for the scalp. And so, like, they're in this story where you can make the argument that, like, well, they're hunting the native tribes and the tribes are causing problems for everyone else. But there's also scenes where they just scalp women and children, which is kind of like they're going above what is deemed okay and they're just scalping women and children because it's at the end of the day, it's money, you know? And it's something very difficult to talk about, like, in the story. No, not in the story, but in, like, context because a lot of people half of the people who read it will be like, "This is fucking horrible," but the other half of people who read it will be like, "This is an amazing story, and I loved every minute of it." And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm probably like the latter half of it, like the latter half of people. Listening to the audiobook of Blood Meridian while driving at night is the most surreal shit I've ever done in my life. And I had to drive back like an hour and a half from this town. I was only able to get like a few chapters in, but the only audiobook out there which exists was done by this old man, and just reading it and like just listening to it is a very surreal, very like calming thing, but it's just kind of like you feel like you're in a dream. It's kind of like it's on a boat. Like if you were to fall asleep while listening to it, you would be in like the arms of an angel. It's insane. But even though they're talking about like people dying or people dying to like Comanche attacks to like another indigenous tribe, they would it's like a dream. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's just an amazing like book. And so in the book, like there's just all these subjects of like good and evil and just generally like horrible things going on. But at the end of it, it's just kind of like even in the ending is horrible. But it's just kind of like a I don't know. It's a very honest, very accurate depiction of what life was like in the old west, and it's kind of like just shows like the depravity which human beings can kind of lead to good and go to in the form of the judge. Because like, to say the judge is like a neutral like a character just does whatever he wants isn't exactly correct, but at the same time it's very much like he's
He
somebody that
doesn't do what he wants, he does what he needs to.
no, so it's like kind of like he operates outside of good and evil, right? It's kind of like how dealing with an alien, right? Or like an animal. Like an animal will kill something and eat it, right? It'll kill like a cub of another species and eat it, but there's nothing, and it doesn't see anything wrong with that because that's just its nature. It's just surviving. And now the judge will do things outside of its nature, right? But it's kind of like a creature that is so it's such a reflection of humanity, but without any of the positive traits. Think of like everything that makes us human and then strip away things like empathy and kindness and then put that there into like a character. And it's
Mm.
interesting because I think that when people say that's like the devil, I don't necessarily think it is. I think it's just the manifestation of everything wrong with people, like humanity. But I think at the same time, the reason why people attribute that to the devil is because I think that's what the devil is to us. But the problem is that the devil isn't like that. Like even in like literature, right? The devil is always a very prideful, very like charismatic figure who's just kind of like you should totally do this. Like, damn your soul for all eternity. You should do this. You should do that. And it takes a pride in beating people down or kind of destroying others, right? It sees itself as better than human beings. But the thing is that the judge is kind of like that, but it also doesn't have any of the more human qualities. Like like the character dances, right? He dances. He talks about history, and one of the most notable lines, which I'm sure has been quoted a billion times over by now, is that he says is that he kills just hundreds of Indians, right? Just slaughtering them, and just people, kids like women, children, kids alike. He in a scene, he literally buys a bunch of puppies off of a child, puts it in a bag, ties the bag, and throws it off a bridge into a river in front of the kid. Like, he's an evil character. But there's a scene where he is sitting down in like a very tropical area, and he finds a butterfly, and he perfectly sketches out the butterfly, writes down information about it, and then crushes it, and then says to one of the characters essentially like, the entire world belongs to me, and anything that exists inside my kingdom without my knowledge exists without my consent. And he kills a butterfly. It is
Mm.
terrifying, and it's one of like the I think few great books about like literature, like the Wild West that I enjoy. Like Butcher's Crossing is also a good one, which had a movie adaptation recently, but the movie's kind of shit. Has Nicolas Cage though, but yeah.
Oh, fun.
Blood. I don't know. Blood Meridian. We're gonna have to sit down. We're gonna have to talk about. Like, we could dedicate an entire podcast episode to Blood Meridian if we really wanted to, but we're already like we've been on this for like about 10 minutes now. I
We're
think.
just trying to like set up a
But
bunch of starting points, so that way
yeah,
people can choose what we like continue towards.
yeah, and if they, if this
Also,
does,
for anybody worried that Phoenix is talking a lot and I'm kind of just sitting here listening, there are topics where I will go on rants, kind of like how he is.
well, we have around 10 minutes left, so we can't really talk about anything like big important. But I think we can end this off with a story, right? So
Hmm.
I put in the podcast suggestions Vietnamese pussy razor blades.
I was getting questions about that from some of the members.
Really, I didn't know that.
I believe Sprizz asked me what the hell you were on about. I'm gonna be
So
honest.
Sprizz is my janissary. For all like the people that don't know who the janissary is, he's essentially part of my domestic terror. No, he's like essentially just gonna kind of be like a helper of the cult. He's gonna do things for us. He's gonna talk, like help us do some things, and for all intents and purposes, he's just gonna be kind of like a security guard, right? And so anyway, he's part of my personal army. We're gonna invade Uzbekistan. no, but no, but so
Gonna pick on
essentially,
smaller countries first.
and we're gonna pick on smaller countries and destroy their inhabitants, replace them with our religion. Fucking Azerbaijan. No, and so anyway, so Razorblade Pussy story. So my grandmother has this cousin, and I'm gonna call him like Rico because I don't know his name, but we're gonna call him Rico because he's Mexican. Whatever. And so his name's Rico, and so Rico actually fought in Vietnam. You know that? And
Oh,
so
fun.
let me tell you the story about how I heard it, right? And then I'll tell you like what actually happened. And so I was sitting down with my grandparents, and grandma starts to explain about Rico and says that Rico is a very interesting guy because he has a bunch of odd jobs. He's converted to Catholicism after he married his wife, but he married his wife and he goes to Vietnam, right? And so what happens is that he goes to Vietnam, fights in the jungles, does everything, right? And he experienced truly horrible things there, which my heart goes out to him for some of the stuff about that, because obviously Vietnam, a
It's
lot
rough.
of
It was a rough time for everybody.
it's it,
Vietnam was not a pleasant time to be in.
it was okay. It was tough. No, but generally, like, the media gives a lot of raps, be like, "Oh, Americans are fucking killing babies over there." And it's like, yeah, maybe, but there's just generally like a lot of horrible stuff going on. I think even now we have no fucking idea the true grants, like the true like the expansiveness of which like horrible things that went on, right? And so anyway, he goes to Vietnam, right? He's fighting, and he gets in a situation where he gets stuck with this girl, right? And so it's quoting this, and so he says that this he was out there in Saigon, right? I think, which is Ho Chi Minh City now, because we lost. Well, we didn't lose, but we abandoned the city. And so he's there with like other people of his troop, and a Vietnamese girl approaches him and tries to get him like to sleep with her. Like, and so it's like a prostitute essentially. She's trying to sleep with him, whatever. And while he's sleeping with her, right, he sleeps with her afterwards, right. while he's sleeping, she supposedly grabs a razor blade, right, and just cuts up his penis, like filet mignons that motherfucker, just like carving. I'm talking like
No.
carving a spear, like fucks him up, good, like he's bleeding out. And so he beats the shit out of her, and he goes like the military. They like, oh fuck, I can't really do anything for you here, man. We have to send you back to the United States. And so they send him back to the United States, whatever. He's in a military hospital for a while, and he doesn't get sent back because he's just like fucked up down there. Like that shit looks like an elephant trunk.
He's fucked up bad
He's
at
fucked
this
up
point.
bad. Bro is circumcised, and it still looks like an elephant trunk. So take with that what you will. No, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. I've never really known about that. I just know that they like fucked his shit up good.
I would sure hope you didn't know what it looked like.
Good old Rico used to whip that out at Christmas every year to tell that story.
It's what stuffed the turkey, I suppose.
Good family tradition.
Mhm.
We used to put that on top. We used to put it on top of the tree.
Uncle Rico takes our advice about, getting extra women.
It's like you know how when you were a kid and your uncles do that thing where they try to pull their thumb off, the little hand trick. Little Rico used to be able to take. Rico used to be able to swing it around. He's be able to detach and swing it around like a nunchuck. It's great. No, but so Rico comes back, gets with this girl, and so what happens is that Rico is trying to have a kid with his wife, but his wife, he can't do anything with it because he's too fucked up down there. And so Rico has his friend, his best friend, fuck his wife in front of him to have the kid. So Rico gets put in the cuck chair. And so this was an insane story to me because my grandmother was telling me this, and I was like, and so my grandma was telling me this, and I'm laughing my ass off. This is no, and she's like, this is no laughing matter. I'm being like, one of our cousins sat in a cuck chair in like 1987. This is like, and so it's fucked up. Whatever, I don't regret
For
it.
anyone that doesn't know what a cook chair is, whenever people are, dancing vertically, the extra chair in a hotel room would be used by a third person, so that way they could just, as Phoenix put it, sit and watch. Continue.
Yeah, and so anyway, so he tells this story, and I know a lot about Vietnam. I know a lot about the Vietnam War at the time, right? Because it was just kind of I've always been interested in history, and so I'm like,
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
Historyism.
And so things like that's really interesting to me. I want to hear more about this. And so I look up Vietnam and this, right? And so supposedly there was this like kind of like they were like a terrorism force. It wasn't the Viet Cong, but it was like a smaller kind of like smaller militia. And what happened was is that they would have the military officers, right, like the United States Army, take them to a bar, and they'd have girls talk to them, right, and the girls would talk to them, get them drunk or whatever by giving them free drinks, and the officers would tell the girls about stuff about the military, and they would sell this information to the Viet Cong in return for weapons. And so the Viet Cong would use this advanced like foreknowledge, right, to just kind of take out American troops. And this is just very common knowledge that this stuff happened. But the more I did research into this, the more I learned that apparently there was an issue where the girls would never really sleep with the guys, but a lot of guys would try to like rape them, right? Because they would try to force themselves on them, right? They'd be like, "When you buy me all these drinks, calling me fucking hunk, whatever, you're not gonna put out." They have that kind of whatever. They have that anger to them, and so they try to force themselves on the women. And what happens is that what would happen is that they would have this kind of like special like kit on them, right? And so the girls would like have like a thing in their dress or whatever that had like a razor blade in it. And so when the man tried to force himself on them, they would take the blade out and they would just slice the fucking guy. And usually they were supposed to like slice his arms or whatever, cause it bleed out or just fuck him up or whatever, they could run away. But some of them would just like while he's out there, they would just cut off his fucking dick. They would slice him up. And so they would only really do this to rapists. And so so after learning this, I sat my grandmother down and I'm like, well, Mima, I think your cousin who showed up to Thanksgiving last year wasn't being totally 100% honest with us, especially with his wife. And she's just like, what are you talking about? Me like, seems this man might have gotten some yellow fever and tried to go in on some little Asian girl, and got his got that second circumcision. And she's like, and I explained the whole situation to her, and she's like, I've never really thought about it before. And so now, like, she's never confronted him about it. She's probably never going to because this guy's already old. Like, he's already grown out of it. Like probably the girl that's like I'm not gonna lie, the girl that probably like did this to him has probably been dead for like 30, 40 years now because Vietnam. Like I think that the average lifespan of the Vietnamese person during like the Vietnamese War was like I think like 30, 40, some shit like that. I don't know, it was obnoxiously low. And so
Hmm.
yeah, no. And so he just I think tried to rape some girl in Vietnam and then just never just never like he just no. Like he just never told was fessed up about it. And then that was like his sin that he got like his dick
Tried
cut off.
playing it off as something,
Yeah, like this girl baited
way
me into sex and
not as
then
bad.
yeah. And he's just like, well, I was married and like I know I was married to my wife, but I was off in the woods by myself and a man needs a little bit of comfort. And then just God is then apparently fucking lied about it. I don't know. I don't know. Like none of us can really ever know what happened in the jungle, right? Like I don't know whether he really got lured there because like fuck, there's a good chance that he might have actually just got lured in the jungle and had his dick cut off. There's a good chance. But at the same time, like at the same fucking time,
At the same time, there's also a good chance that that's not the case.
yeah.
Truly, it's one of those stories where you could take the circumstantial evidence with the factual evidence and believe what you want to believe.
Like the hall. No, I know.
Whoa, 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 whoa! This is episode 1 now. Calm down.
Yeah, we gotta
Already talked about Nazis killing the Pope and raping people. Like, they
and
gotta understand where we're coming from first, I suppose.
yeah, they gotta understand the truth. No,
Yeah,
we'll get
sure.
we'll get Stevie in here to explain all that like at a later date. But he's very much like he's a conspiracy theorist. He's also a very high-ranking government official. So
Maybe don't say that.
we'll censor this out later because we're already above our time limit, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we gotta sign off now.
So one of the things is that so we have 10, we have 38 seconds left. I'm fucking wasting time, and so we're 38 seconds left. I'm just gonna pause it here. I don't know what to name this episode of the podcast because I mean I know we called it propaganda at these nuts, but we're not really talking about propaganda.
I think Propaganda These Nuts has gotta be a series name.
It's gotta be a series
You
name.
can just call it the pilot episode.
We'll call it Chapter One of this great book.
Chapter 1.
Chapter One, yeah. And well,
Chapter 1, the beginning of ideas.
dude,
Something.
I'm gonna call this the manifesto. This is the entire podcast. We can call it the cast of causality.
The cast of causality is pretty good.
Yeah, and so I don't know. So well, we know we're gonna be taking us out of this 35:40 my time, and we know we're already at an hour limit. I think we'd probably go for like I think honestly in the future we might go to like an hour and a half because this went by really quickly.
Hmm. No,
So
I thought we would like start running our like thought train dry, but it just kept piling on top of each other. Yeah.
dude, I bring the
No,
AC.
I know we normally have like, these long rants for like,
Hours, yeah.
whole like yeah, quite literal hours at a time. And like I said, I know Phoenix spoke a lot here, right?
Uh huh.
You can ask him. There are a lot of topics where you mention them and I go fucking nuts. They're very specific things that I can talk about for hours. No input needed.
So, uh,
I I think that we need to go and make it like a section of like the ones we completed out of the podcast topics.
yeah,
That might be something else.
we might need to do that just because. Yeah, I
We
mean
did get a
honestly,
lot today.
I'm gonna make a Google Doc. I'm gonna make a Google Doc and I'll put all the podcast topics in there so we can just review it as we go along the podcast instead of having to like scroll along the messages and everything.
Make
But
it like an Excel spreadsheet.
yeah,
We
but
gotta see how many times we we talk about killing the Pope.
dude, it's like a we need a Venn diagram for this shit. It's just like randomly shoot overlap.
Oh, I was thinking like spreadsheet, and then you like put a tick mark next to the topic every time we spoke about it in that episode. So like episode 1,
Mm,
the Pope, white boy gangsters, Hitler, all those get like one tag.
yeah, and well, we're running like five. We're already running like 5 minutes over meter, so I don't really know how to end this.
All right, we gotta end this here. Have a good
So
one. If you want to hear more of this.
yeah, so all you heathens who are unawakened who are listening to this, all you people that are like, watching this for the first time, probably seeing this on your Spotify, it's not gonna get recommended. We're not gonna get recommended on any algorithm. We're not gonna
Oh, I
fucking.
guarantee you.
We're not gonna get
You will
recommended,
have to search for us
dude.
to find us.
Dude, this is the
But if you
definition of
find us and you enjoy it, stay here.
this is the definition of a cult. This is hidden. This is hidden wisdom, dude.
It's hidden media.
It's hidden wisdom, dude. This is like Jiao Hong Shu. It's like hidden wisdom, dude. I'm like the I'm like
Okay,
Confucius.
we gotta stop going on our
Anyway,
little rant.
and so yeah, no. So anybody who's listening to this, I'm really glad that you tuned in and watched this first episode. I don't know. I'm probably gonna post this to the YouTube channel. So if you like the podcast or
Oh,
anything you want to hear us discuss in the future, put it down below in the comments, and I'll likely review it, go down with you. And if you happen to mention anything political, I'll argue with it. I'll argue about it with you. I will.
we'll have to debate it on
That's
the
debate it, dude.
podcast.
I'm about to. Yeah, this is gonna get like
They're
five
gonna be like,
thousand.
yeah, no, politics bad, and gonna be like, well, now. We're gonna
Well, now,
hunt you
buddy.
for sport.
Yeah, and
And then we're gonna get, canceled on my non-existent Twitter.
Yeah, dude, we're gonna. Well, if you type in the thing, we're gonna threaten you. We'll be like, well, we're gonna cut your fucking dick off. How about that? We're gonna. How would you like to be Rico? You know. And so if you're
Yeah.
here, listen to it. Type a comment down below. If we're on YouTube, if you listen to this on YouTube, hit a like button. Spotify, try to do the same. Share with your friends if you like it. If we end up on the front page of Reddit and some guy like being like, fuck this
Oh, and somebody's trying to
podcast,
cancel us?
dude. Someone's trying to cancel. Dude, if someone tries to cancel us,
That
I
would be
will.
peak.
It would be so peak, dude. It'd be my 15 minutes of fame.
That would be.
Dude, I'm gonna.
That'd be my favorite thing. I want commentary YouTubers to use my voice clips in their videos.
So anybody who wants this, let me tell you the full name and no.
Let me just drop my social security number and my address real quick.
I'll put my address in the comments below if anybody wants to sort this out. Send out to your friends.
Have a good one.
Yeah, have a good one. You have a beautiful day. You have a beautiful day, you motherfuckers. No, have a good one. Share us. Tell your friends. Tell your friends about us. You fucking little man syndrome
Fucking
wiggers,
pricks.
dude. Wiggers.
All of you in the viewership
Dude,
here, all of you, little man syndrome. I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care if you're tall. Little man syndrome.
If anybody's listening to this, if you can get me on like the Shane Gillis podcast, I will fuck. Dude, anybody who gets you on the Shane Gillis podcast can have my soul. You can have one of the ones in my bag, dude. Anyway, so just
one of the many souls he owns.
Dude, I want to be shit talk on Saturday Night Live. It's gonna be fucking hilarious. If you can do it, I
Alright.
get canceled on Twitter. Anyway, whatever. We're going over time. See you guys later.
See ya. Bye.
Bye bye.